All right, so it's gonna be a little different than some of the presentations you've seen today. I'm gonna go ahead and start with introducing myself. So hello everyone, my name is Brittany Nixon and I am unsustainable. I have been trying to kick a nasty fossil fuel habit for like at least the last 2 years. And I have definitely fallen off the organic foods wagon recently, especially pending finals and everything. And you know, this is really hard. And this tension that I was feeling between the knowing what I should do and what I was actually doing is kind of what was motivating my experience here at school. And so it led me to this valley, kind of between what I call Mount Sustainability and Mount Society. So I wanted to create these communication pathways between the two, because I was really torn by this struggle that I was having to integrate these behaviors in my life, and the idea of whether or not I really could come up with a solution and get someone to implement it in their life. Is that my place to do that for somebody else? So I went about this exploration in a few different ways. I looked at all sorts of mediums. So I played around with short form documentary, I tried graphic design, I did journalistic videos with where we interviewed representatives from the UN and designers, and then I even tried my hand at physical object making using sustainable art practice. And all of them had their own power in terms of communication, I think. But what they seemed to be lacking, at least to me, was an interaction. So all of them felt like I was learning something and then going out into the world and telling everyone about it. But I wasn't engaging with anyone in any type of discussion, and I wasn't getting any input back from them. And I found that really frustrating, and I felt that that was so one-sided. So I jumped at the chance to design a project in a room specifically built for interaction. So this is the Decision Theater. The Decision Theater is a specialty facility at ASU made for complex decision making and complex data visualization. But right now they use a pretty limited input interface. So they use a mouse and a keyboard to enter in data, and then the visuals update from there. What they're keen on exploring is other ways to involve multiple participants or other ways to interact with the system. All right, so what we set out to do is to combine art, media design, and sustainability to create a digital interactive experience within this room of the Decision Theater. All right, speaking of interaction, I'm gonna have you guys play a quick game with me. So humor me for a moment. I need you to all close your eyes, and I need you to raise one hand. Go ahead and keep your eyes closed for me, and I'm gonna read off a list of questions. As I read these questions, if your answer is yes, keep your hand in the air. If your answer is no, please lower your hand and keep it lowered until I tell you. Do you recycle? Are you conscious of the amount of water you use? Do you know where or how your power is generated? Do you use alternative or low emissions transportation? Do you eat meat? Do you belong to a community group, volunteer, or participate in another activity? Do you actively participate in your local governance or policy? And are you aware of, or do you attempt to limit your consumer behaviors? Keep your eyes closed. If your hand is in the air, you are a winner of the game, but don't identify yourself. Go ahead and lower your hands. And on three, everyone can open their eyes. 1, 2, 3. All right. Winners, you ready to find out what you've won? You won yourself a first-class trip to Mars. And a chance to found a brand new sustainable colony. So the thing about sustainability is nobody wins, really, unless we all participate, right? But there are other things that we can learn from this activity. So I want you to think about a few things. First, how did it make you feel when I was asking you those questions? Did you feel guilty? Were you nervous? Were you proud? Did you feel at ease? And would your responses have changed if your eyes were open? If we were in another building? If we were with a different group of people? And your reactions to these questions kind of show two things. One, the prioritization of your own values, and two, your perception of what the commonly held values in the room are. Commonly held values are important, and understanding them is important for sustainability because our values, especially the ones that tend to define what success looks like, are major drivers of our behavior and ultimately our environmental impact. So, for example, in the US, this is especially true when it comes to business. Our values support a success model that includes profit maximization and unlimited growth, which comes at a severe cost to the environment. But this idea tying sustainability and expression to our cultural views, or our cultural values isn't new. People have been talking about this for over 70 years. But the hard part about the values is their intangibility, and that's what made them really enticing for our project, is that you can't visually tell me what a value looks like. And that's kind of how we became interested in creating a digital world that would let you play around or experience the expression of your values in a different way than you expect. So these are some of our key questions for the exploration. We wanted to know how people demonstrate or reflect their values visually or behaviorally, and in what ways can the underlying drivers of sustainability problems be gamified or visualized. So rather than looking at trash cleanup, for example, we wanted to look at the values that lead to littering, basically. And our key interest for the design is how we could use technology to drive interpersonal interaction and cooperation. So rather than the screen divide between people, how we could use the screen to actually get people to interact with each other, and how experimenting with real-time audio-visual manipulation would affect user engagement. So would users stay engaged for longer? Would they remember more after the experience because of the real-time feedback they were getting? In order to take a look at this, we needed kind of a grounding theory, or like a foundational theory. And we looked at Shalom Schwartz's cultural value orientation theory to do that. We chose it because it used a really large sample size and had respondents from almost every inhabited country. And the questionnaire was administered in native dialects. And it built off of a previous study that had to do with individual value domains. We felt that this was really important because it gave us a consistent language to discuss both individually and societally held values and how they affect our ability to be sustainable from both a macro and a micro level. So we were able to use the same terminology to talk about what an individual could do versus what a country could do. One more important thing to note from the theory, I won't go too much deeper into it, but it does have 3 main bipolar dimensions. And we use the tension between these dimensions to create structure for our experience and to allow people to express their own personal values anywhere along the spectrum. So you were never cornered into a situation in the experience where you had to pick only one value. You could drift between the two if you wanted. Here was our development process. So we began with a group ideation, research, and kind of exchange of knowledge phase. I want to pay particular note to this just because it was an interdisciplinary project, and this step I think is extremely important working in interdisciplinary groups, because this is what builds the foundation for collaborative learning across the whole development process. So the more we knew about each other and our skills and our background bodies of knowledge, the better we were able to troubleshoot and address problems later on within our process. After we got through that phase, we formulated a design question. Our final design question came after multiple iterations. You can see there's a few different stages of our process where there are feedback loops built in. Another step I'd like to pay particular attention to is our stakeholder engagement. We liked to tie that with our prototyping because it gave us an opportunity to test user interaction right alongside our main stakeholders, so we could see if we were really tapping into the right drivers to create cooperation or not. One of our main stakeholders in this project was the Actipus Lab here at ASU. They are a psychology lab that focuses on cooperation and conflict, and they were really interested in seeing what we could present digitally, which was fun to find out. Here's some of our early results. So here's a few people playing with one of the modes of our system. So this is some of our prototyping. This mode we like to call a discovery mode. So in this mode, users can search the screen using a shape that's tied to a point on their body to reveal an underlying image. So they can move around in front of the display and they can see something underneath it. This allows the users to either engage individually in sort of like a hunt and find, or cooperatively in order to find larger shapes or display larger hidden images. And then we came up with a few other different user interactions that we're now tying together into a sustainability storyline that will be presented in one cohesive piece. We have encountered tons of challenges, and that's normal, that's expected, honestly. One of them being limited time to test and develop in our actual display space. So we were building on small screens and then spending a lot of time calibrating to this 7-screen display, and that was eating up a lot of our development time. If we had a chance to go back, we would probably spend more time securing time within the space or getting better specifications to design outside of the space. Another challenge was just visually interpreting values. That is super hard. But we found it's easier to get at when you start to play with the relationships and engagements between players. And then the last challenge was communicating with stakeholders. Although we were really great at communicating with our stakeholders in the beginning, we kind of lost track of them later on throughout the process. So as we got deeper into development, further beyond the prototyping stage, we kind of lost track of engaging some of our stakeholders. As far as outcomes and future recommendations go, further development is already ongoing. We'll be presenting the final form next Friday, and I plan on doing further work in the interactive digital media realm anyways. I would also recommend better development of engagement metrics, and we found towards the very end, but we didn't have a lot of time to get into it, a lot of research about cooperative gaming metrics. So things that track eye movement, length of time with eyes engaged, verbal communication, and social and team flow literature that would be really applicable to our design. But we didn't have enough time to really dig into it and get it programmed into our system. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of potential for digital communication about sustainability, and I hope that there are more students pursuing this path.